And starting recording. Tonight's presentation is going to be Board of Ed. Everyone on the committee received for this workshop the materials in advance, along with the memo that's here on paper for you. The only new document that's in front of everyone, which Mr. Montini will go through, is just the slides for the presentation. So if you want to take some notes, you're welcome to do so and handwrite them on your documents or take your own personal notes. Mr. Mayor, do you want to make any comments?
Just as far as exactly where we are, so we're going to listen to the Board of Ed's presentation tonight. Next week, we're listening to the police and a few other budgets. And the following week, April 7th, will be the night when the town will have received all of our budget requests. So what we do is we continue working on everything, and on 4/14, this group, the joint boards, will review all the budget proposals, discuss them, and at that time, we will have in place a pretty good handle on our revenue figures, and we will have basically a week to put everything together and present a proposed budget to this group for discussion. And that will be on April 21 is the date when our body puts together a proposed budget. We then publish it in the newspaper on May 7th. We have a public hearing on May 12th, and we adopt the budget on May 14th. So the long and short of that is that there will be many discussions among the finance board, the rural finance office, the school department, the school's finance office, and a lot of information going back and forth. And we'll get the feelings of this group as we go along. And together, as a group, the Burgesses on the finance board will craft a budget. We'll have several, probably at least 3 discussions, then a public hearing, and then a final vote. So there's a long way to go. The fun part starts pretty soon. And tonight, I don't want anyone to think there's going to be any great decisions made. We're basically taking in information, and it'll all be assessed and put together with a whole host of factors from all the other departments, the revenue side, the state of Connecticut, and some other factors. Now, it doesn't seem like there's going to be any mystery to the state this year. Most years we're holding our breath, waiting to hear until the very end what's going to happen. But this year, they've already told us they're not giving us anything extra except the likelihood of getting 300,000 or 400,000 for excess costs for special ed. But unless someone knows more than I do, I think those numbers are pretty much set. So that means it's all going to be on the borough side to take that into account and put together our final budget. So any questions on the process? All right, take it away, James.
Thank you, Mayor. With that, if you want to get your handy dandy slideshow ready to go, Mr. Montini, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I believe Chairman Lincoln's going to say a few words first.
Yep. So Chairman Higgins, Mayor Hess, members of the Finance Board, Burgesses, and community members, thank you for having us here tonight to present to you the Board of Ed's budget request to the borough. I say this every year, but this budget is probably the most difficult in my 7.5 years on the board. It's a budget that I believe we can stand by, and it provides for our students. This budget includes many difficult decisions and impacts our entire district. Superintendent Montini sent you guys a memo that outlines our budget requests and provides some information as to how we got to this number. This request is for $73,540,534, or an increase of 6.23%. The drivers of this include special education costs, transportation, contractual increases, and healthcare. The Board of Education does not take lightly our financial situation or the decisions that we need to make. Our duty is to ensure that our students are provided with the best education possible. We have had workshops and discussions to come to this amount and this request, and we believe this is what it will take to provide our students. We look forward to sharing more information about our budget requests with all of you and answering any questions you might have. And with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Montini.
Mr. Chair. Thank you all for being here. Chris Montini, Superintendent of Schools. The packet that we printed out for you, we didn't do whole budget binders. A year ago today, actually, or a year ago yesterday, as it were, the mayor had mentioned that the full binders weren't necessary. We printed out for you a few of the introductory pages, and then page 8 to the end. That's essentially the object code comparison. And then the appendix, and I can go to page 8 real quick before I get in, just so you. The object code comparison, where it goes line by line between last year and this year, and all the way to the left, there's the corresponding page to the detail in the appendices behind. So if you were looking at executive administration, that's item number 1. Plan page 68. So then you can go into the back here, page 68, and find more detail as it relates to that. I did provide you or email you or through Allison, emailed you the memo in advance, and I printed it out in case anyone didn't have time to read it in advance. So that's there for you as well. That essentially articulates what is a difficult or challenging financial time for us here in the Naugatuck Public Schools and essentially throughout the state. We're seeing the highest averages throughout the state, almost that we've ever seen. Some districts are escaping a little less impacted, and others are like Naugatuck or perhaps a little worse. So the full document was emailed to you. Full document in terms of the proposal is also linked up right on our website, and it's in board docs. So you can go under the Board of Education on our website, the proposed budget's there alongside with the current 24-25 approved. And it was emailed to you, and it's in board docs. I am going to go over here, if you don't mind, and I'm going to stand so that I can see faces. And one other thing before I begin. The projector, of course, at 6 o'clock started acting a little funny. It actually shut off. The fan went on, and it was seemingly overheating, but it went right back on. So the backup plan, albeit small, is over there, and you still have the printouts in front of you. So we'll move forward. So we have our North Star, our guiding light, if you will, is the vision of the graph. Everything that we do, all that we try to provide is to cultivate in our students each one of the dispositions that you see on the left. We work to cultivate in our students to help them become responsible citizens, researchers, innovators, informed thinkers, communicators, and problem solvers. That begins in pre-K, and it goes all the way until I'll get this. If not, do you mind clicking? Great. To our graduation. And when we talk about graduation, we're talking about graduation of our high schoolers, our adult ed, because sometimes it's a journey and it might take a different and varying amounts of time for certain individuals given circumstances. In order to do that, we develop strategic priorities. They're generally focused on the large buckets year to year: academic excellence, positive, safe culture and climate, designing systems for student success, right? So all of our systems should work in service of teaching and learning, and cultivating a talented, thank you, so I don't fall, talented workforce. I'm going to highlight a few bright spots in terms of accountability. We've had schools of distinction before. Generally, we have some each year. A school of distinction is recognized for the state testing and being the top 10% of a particular category. This year we had 4. We had Hop Brook, Maple Hill, Salem, and Elementary, all recognized being in the top 10% for growth on the state test, which would be SBA in this regard. On our school accountability index report, we went up 28 points from year to year. Total points, that's 2%, 2 points rather, in the overall index. 3 spots when you compare Naugatuck to the rest of the state, 152 to 200. 2 spots compared to Alliance District on top of 5 from last year. And again, we had 4 schools of distinction. We are very proud of those things. We also, when it comes to our high school and students leaving us, collect data from year to year. 23% of our students took at least 1 AP course. So we're continually pushing and challenging rigorous coursework for all of our students. What I appreciate in terms of data point even more is that 2/3, 66% scored a 3 or higher. And an AP is a rigorous college level course. So the 66% is pleasing, if you will. 42% took at least 1 dual enrollment with a 94 pass rate. Dual enrollment, meaning high school and college pathway track. 45% completed a career pathway. In regards to our graduates last year, 37.8 enrolled in a 4-year college, 23.1 enrolled in a 2-year college. Now, we had seen, since if you're a student in good standing and community college or 2-year colleges being free, we had seen that increasing in Naugatuck and the other decreasing. And this is here a little bit different where we had an uptick in terms of the 4-year. So we'll see this year, but given our community, it could be likely that 2-year goes up as a precursor to then entering into a 4-year. I likely certainly would have done that if that was around for me. 16% plan to enter the workforce, 9.5 into educational and vocational training, 3.7 in the military, 7.8 in transition plan, and 52% completed the FAFSA. Roughly the kids up there, the 2 percentages up there added together that we're going to go into college. So that's the way. So I'm not going to, last year, I think I had 3 or 4 slides of photos. We combined them, and there's a lot going on here. We start our school year, and this is a picture from Convocation. This is our entire staff. That's our teacher of the year delivering a message. I spoke about everything that we do in service of teaching and learning. Our job is to create experiences and as the Board of Ed to create conditions that we can collaborate so that all students will thrive. We present to you a budget that is reflective of our values and of our purpose. And our purpose is to equip these people right here, right? Apart from the students, the most important people in our district are the people that are on the front lines. These are our teachers. These people create the experiences so that we are protecting wildlife, engaging civically, so that we are running at-risk programs for girls in the summer. We're running a new fire course. We are running an EMT course. We're engaging parents. We're focusing on early literacy. We're singing at Radio Music Hall, and the girls and boys combined is like Mr. Roper, 8 or 10 consecutive championships, double 4P then, right? So we're providing and creating experiences for all of our students. Stand before you, likely going to talk about some larger numbers that you'd like to be hearing or that you want me to be bringing to you. Same is true for the Board of Education. We find ourselves in a difficult context, and I hope today you'll leave understanding that we have done a tremendous amount of work to lower it, and we bring forth to you those things that will equip our people to create the experiences and do the wonderful things that happen in our school every single day, every day. So our mantra is continuous improvement in all that we do. The strategic priorities are aligned with what we do in terms of creating our improvement plans, safe, welcoming and responsive school climate. Focusing on our early literacy program improvement and development. Continuing the services that we've been providing for our multilingual learners, ML/EL English learners. So if you see ML/EL throughout the presentation, that's what it refers to. Continuing, we'll be in our last year of a math rollout and expanding our dual credit pathways. So there's a lot of words here, but essentially We have some momentum with the Safe School Climate Committee, but all of the policies around bullying are changing for 25-26. It's actually, we won't be using the word bullying, it'll be changing to a challenging and aggressive behavior. But we'll be focusing on that. That's the state of Connecticut. We're gonna continue early literacy program improvement. We want to maintain the services we have for English language learners. Same with, we're finalizing or implementing for the final year, the rollout for math. And we will be launching a new course in high school, that will be grant funded, for manufacturing. So that's the expanded dual on top of the work that we did last year with the trades, now another pathway for manufacturing. So before we get into dollars and cents, I want to explore who is the Naugatuck Public School student. So in terms of our enrollment, we have 4,000 students in Naugatuck, see over there. The bar graph to the right are multilingual learners, English language learners, as you can see. In 17-18 was 251, and now we're at 616. Students eligible for free and reduced lunch is at 58.2. We are a diverse school system. 41% of our students are Hispanic or Latino, 38% white, 13% Black or African American, 4.9. Can't read because of this, but I think it's 2 or more races. But essentially, you're Hispanic, Latino, white, in terms of 41, 38, Black or African American, 2 or more races. Very diverse. Mind that clicking? So when we look at our enrollment from October to October, we were down 137 students from October of 22-24 to this past October. We use October, the month that we have to report to the state, as the consistent in terms of year-to-year comparisons. 26 fewer students with IEPs. That's a decrease of 2.9% in 1 year, and likely the first that I can recall. But our overall prevalence rates maintained, it was flat. So we still have 21% of our students, which is a couple of percentages higher than the state average, I believe, right? Yeah. We had 115 less students directly certified for free and reduced lunch. That's a decrease of 4.6% in 1 year. Can you minimize that? Click on the little minus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so there's a box around some of these other enrollment changes, which are drivers for what I will share with you financially. So we had 7 students outplaced year to year, an increase of 23%. So an increase of 23% on top of a 15% last year. So 38% more in 2 years, students that were requiring special education outplacement. 178 more students attending magnet schools. That's an increase of 40%. The big bump here was 73 at Emmett O'Brien. The biggest bump last year was ACES at Chase. ACES at Chase here is another 27 students out of that plus 178, but the largest was Emmett O'Brien. 50 more multilingual learners than last year, an increase of 10% in 1 year. And then since 17-18, going back to the bar graph that I referenced, we are up 100, and I think that says 23% or some odd, but it's high. Thank you. So we're projecting a decrease in enrollment of another 112 students. That's a projection at this point, and you can see the enrollment history the last few years would show some declining enrollment. I mentioned to you that we're 58.2 in terms of free and reduced lunch. That's the percentage increase is 61% in the last 15 years, right? So a large increase in terms of free and reduced lunch over 15 years, but this is the first decrease, be it all small, from 59.1 down to 58 that in recent memory, and I went back 15 years, but I'm in district longer than that, and we had been growing in that regard seemingly for multiple decades. So there are certain factors, and the largest 2 that are impacting and driving the budget this year. So increased costs associated with out-of-district tuition and transportation, rising costs and additional placements. A health insurance renewal of 11%. We are down $778,000 in terms of revenue. And although we may get to the mayor's point, there's nothing in the budget for the additional excess cost next year. It's this year and then the following year in the governor's budget. Maybe they do something in the interim. However, that will likely just be used to outweigh any less federal funding that we get, because we don't find out our federal funding until September. So it could be 778 is really lagging from the last 2 years. It could be a little less than that. The teacher's pension transfer from the borough, from about 120,000, aging facilities in need of maintenance, repair, and renovation. So the request of the Board of Education, as the chairman of the board referenced earlier or stated earlier, is $73.5 million, 6.23% increase, or roughly $4.3 million. Now, in addition to that, the request takes into account the continuation of an additional 1.8 million beyond that from the borough. So some years ago, and it'll be on another slide, the borough contributes up to 1.8 million for health insurance. Beyond that, so it's 73.5 million plus 1.8. And that started with the 3 asterisks, yes, in 21-22. So here you have a history of the, from going back from 11-12 of the budget and financial allocation from the borough. So how do we get to the 6.23%? Salaries and benefits account for 72%. There you go. Nope, 75%. About 72 as well. And purchase services accounts for 19. Supplies 4% of our budget, and capital is 2%. But what's interesting is if we just go back to 2020, we were at 82% salaries and benefits. So what's happening is, as purchase services, as tuition, so that's 6%, that's right here in purchase services, right where tuition, transportation, out-of-district placements are living. And you'll notice that in order really in our budget to accommodate that 6%, the 6% came from essentially salaries. Because benefits are relatively flat, and purchase services is a 6% change in the last 5 or 6 years. Our budget, when you look by salary, when you look by series rather, salaries were, when we started this process, all the contractual obligations. If we had maintained the staff that we had last year, salaries were an increase of 1.7 billion. So I'm sure when you deal with the town, you have the same number of police officers, you roll it over, their contract is at 2.5%, that's 400,000. Ours was 1.7 million. Only the Board of Education, because we were high, as you know, it said in the memo, we reduced some out 25 positions total, and we closed an elementary school. We're in the process of closing an elementary school. Those things really negated and took away or countered, if you will, or decreased that 1.7, so that overall our salaries are down 178,000 year to year. Benefits, that's 1.4 million. A lot of that's the 11% health renewal, but there are other costs included there. The 2.8 million in purchase services, that's the out-of-district transportation and transportation that I wrote in the memo to let you know that's required. We're legally bound, and that essentially is the big driver here today. Supplies and utilities is 88,000 less, and capital includes $264,000 in an increase. So this may seem high, but I can tell you that 264 to get to 762, we've been running at about 498 here, historically, which is very low for the number of buildings and the age of our buildings. Please. So when we look at the state education to the borough, the 29 million has remained flat. Our grant revenue is either flat from the state or decreasing federally. We see that the majority of our requests, of budget requests, comes from the borough, 51%. Some years ago, this was at 46, 47, 48%. And the burden is shifting a little more so to local government from state. We had received an alliance increase more than 10 years in a row. Not anymore. This is the revenue, essentially, the 700,000 in terms of, the decreased revenue. This ties into the previous slide with a little bit more detail. I talked about the 1.7 million in contractual salary increases. Now we're at 178,000, a net reduction. Healthcare in and of itself, 1,085,000. Pension, 120,000. Increase in transportation. So we have our regular transportation, the yellow STA buses. That's a 4% contract year to year. Our, which by the way, was very good and is good in terms of a school bus contract. CTS is the company that we went out to bid for our automation replacement. Problem with the CTS is that's 5%, 5.5% on specific schools, not all of them. So when you factor some of the out of district placements, students that we're transporting via McKinney-Vento, which is students that are experiencing homelessness, that's driving that number up beyond our regular contractual increases to a total of 1.1%. So when you see the increase here, or in terms of dollars, this is the percentage based on the entire budget. Right? So if you look back here to the tuition, if we brought you a 2.85% total increase, we'd be bringing you just tuition. Right? Just the tuition account. So we're starting, and I'll get here in a few slides, just with tuition and transportation, we're almost at 4% right there, out of our 6%. That's our context. So I talked a little bit about facilities, small amounts of professional education services, a decrease in supplies, which is, I think, attributed to IT, partially IT, and all other, right? We had some projects there that we really wanted to do that we're waiting on. So budget, we're reducing, there's a memo there, and it's about 25 positions, 25.6, something to that effect. Budget to budget, it's a net 22.1 reduction in FTE. That's reduction of 15.1 teaching staff, certified teaching staff, 3 administrators from central office, 1 from a school, 2 custodians. We are increasing at this point in time 2.5 paraeducators because we have a very large, we're adding a class at Maple Hill from our preschool. We have a very large special education class that we'll be adding, or I should not say the class will be large. We have an incoming kindergarten class that would require the addition of another classroom, which so we are all set with a teacher in terms of reallocating from existing resources that require some additional pairs. We are down 4.5 FTEs. By the way, FTE is full-time equivalent. I'm assuming the other departments use that, but 2.5s or half-time people equal 1.0 FTE. So here you have a collection of a number of 0.5s and a couple of 0.1s that equal a total of 4.5 full-time positions. Down 1 nurse, and the athletic trainer was +1, but really that was just shifted from contracted services. We used to contract out, we hired our own, which has been really good for our program. In addition to that, because of the reduced federal funding, we reduced 2.5 FTEs in reading and math assistants. We were reducing the workdays of reading and math assistants from 160 to 140. We're reducing 2 FTE on track coordinators. And it is looking like LEAP will not be available this year. If we do not have the funding, the student and family engagement specialist will also be eliminated because we have not been able to identify a funding source. So these things are were done because of the reduced grant money that we've used. So if I can take a minute to explain, the themes here are likely clear. In 2022, we had 27 students that were required out of district special education, placement and transportation. So that went up in 1 year, 4 students, an increase of 15%. I mentioned that at the opening. And then another 7 this year, or 22.5% to 38. So if we plan for 4, we're going to be at 42. So the average cost per placement of a student that's outplaced for one of these schools is $138,500. The average cost for transportation is $60,000. So now you have 7 students, 7 new students that were unforeseen in one particular year, and you're already at 1.4 million now. So this is essentially what is happening to us, and we don't have a budget that can absorb 7 students in one particular year if we didn't budget for them. And then you'll see the net tuition expense from 22 to 23 has almost doubled into the 6 million that we are projecting for 25-26. And we had increased previously 50%. Now we're at 47 again from that particular account. So I mentioned at the onset that these are issues that every group is taking up in education. People are lobbying for regulation. There's no regulation in terms of costs. We're obligated to provide a free and appropriate education for everyone. And my communicating this to you, this is not an indictment on anyone who requires more. Our job as a public school institution is to educate all of our students. I'm simply here trying to communicate to you costs that are not totally in our control, or of which we have very little control. Now, what I will say very quickly is that we run some amazing programs and retain lots and lots of students. Lots. We're always trying to reevaluate and bring folks back. We brought a child back recently, and they're doing well. It's always our goal is to have students attend our schools. And we'll continually looking to do that. We also have increased needs, more advocates in a litigious society, right? And folks that are, there are times when we cannot provide everything that a student needs. And there are times when, of these 7 students, 3 of them, by the way, were move-ins. We didn't have a choice with those. Well, 3 move-in and 1 placement. 2 move-ins and a placement, or all 3 moves? All 3 moves. But sometimes they can be placed either by the judicial system or DCF. And then we're on the hook for the tuition as well. And that could just be out of the blue. Oh, here you go, here's another 100,000. Well, we have although it's a large budget, your largest department budget, we don't have extra or additional accounts to be able to shoulder that burden if you have multiple students in one particular year. So this is a graph of student enrollment over here. You've already seen this, but I'm just going to do a visual. I have 2 more slides here and I'm closing and I'm going to answer some questions. So student enrollment has some declining enrollment. That's a history of our FTE. You can also see that we are reducing our full-time equivalents as a district. This is the number of out-of-district placements, as you can see, on an upward trajectory. And of course, what coincides with that? Increased costs, hovering over 3 million to 6 million in just a short amount of time. So we are at 6.23% or 4.3 million. We have already reduced many positions in a school. So if you think about 6.23% and 4.3 million, It's a large number. Again, one more time. If you subtract the 3.96%, that's solely related to out-of-district tuition and transportation, the increase, then you will have 2.27% increase of 1.5 million. So if we didn't have this as a driver, we obviously right now would be in a lot better place in terms of with a smaller increase than we currently are. And then out of that 1.5 million, if you take the 1.58% for health insurance, and you subtract it, you're left at 0.69% or 487,000 for everything else. So we're bringing you a large increase, but we're getting smaller as an organization. We are in terms of both people and in terms of schools and school buildings. We made a number of extremely difficult choices in order to get here. And you can see, I could take the 400,000 just from workman's comp and take it here, we'd be left at 87. But my point is that there in gray for Naugatuck, instead of black and white, it's a high number with really a couple of specific drivers that are cause for what is a larger increase than normal. Just take a sip of water. At this point, I'm happy to answer any questions, or if I can't, somebody from my team perhaps can.
Thank you, Chris, for that
Thanks.
presentation. There's a few slides that were added in this year that were put on at the request of Diane and myself to kind of give a more detailed or summarized version of what's been changing over the last few years with the Board of Ed, specifically to how enrollment is down, FTEs are down, but costs are up. And I think those line graphs that they put together summarize that quite well. I did want to, for everyone who's new on the committee, because we do have a lot of new members, in your summary packets, if you want to flip to page 10, and I'll give you a moment to get there. The reason I want to call your attention to page 10 is just to go over what it looks like from the dollars that are actually contributed by the borough versus the total dollars that are in their budget. So the reason I call you to page 10 is because that's just the total line. If you look somewhat to the third column on the right at the very bottom, the 73.54 million, that matches what is being asked for by the Board of Ed. If you look just 2 columns over to the left, the 86.3 million is their total budget. And Bernice, keep me honest here. That is correct, right?
That is correct.
Doing it right? All right. So essentially what we're doing is we're subsidizing 85% of the total budget. This spreadsheet, along with all the other data, can get very confusing. So I just wanted to kind of walk everyone through those line items, just to kind of like hone your eyes in on some areas. Now, with that being said, Mr. Montine, I do have some questions for you. Specifically on, sorry, let me grab my notes. Page 14. With regards to the FTE counts, this is typically a hot topic of discussion that I'll see throughout the community via social media or just in passing of hallway conversations in the community, etc. Now, I'm not a paid employee for the town. I volunteer for this job along with Diane and many others. So we're not on any of these payroll numbers, but I do want to just take a moment and take a look at some of the positions over the last few years from 2021 to current. We're down 14 total positions. Okay, and that is quite, I think, impressive as a piece because you're not asking for more money and more people. The other thing I wanted to point out too, I know this comes up a lot, is a comment that will typically be passed. If you just get rid of some of the administrators, you'll have a lot of money. Well, I see here on the central administration line, you're reducing two positions this year. Is that correct?
That's right.
Yeah, so that is reflected on page 68 of your packet, which you'll see, it looks like the DEI and Coordinator of Special Services are the two
Correct.
that are being eliminated. So I know those are kind of hot topic buttons for a lot of the community members, so I just wanted to really point that out, and I'm not gonna say thank you for doing that, but I know that comes up a lot for discussion, and I think it's important for the community members to see that decisions have been made and positions have been eliminated at that level. Okay, I just wanted to point that out for you, and for the ones that are in the public will complain a lot about it, I'll leave it at that. But as far as my questions go, so if we could take a look on the page 86. And the reason why I'm asking questions on this, Mr. Montini, is I think there might be a math error,
Okay.
and I'm hoping there isn't. On page 86, the boiler replacement is in there as an estimate. And I don't show that that adds up to the total 765, 279 you're asking for.
No, we are making a request to the capital committee to replace the boiler.
Okay, so that's being moved to another area of the budget.
It's being, yes. There's, so Bob Neff chairs the 5-year capital committee. It will go through that particular committee.
Okay,
I've written to them, and at first we were pursuing, the waiving of a bid in an emergency, but we'll be seeking to replace the boiler through them and through the formal process soon.
thank you.
Yep.
For line item 30, the automation and heating repairs, was that something that could have been covered during the COVID grants that, with the ACs and ventilation that was, I don't know, was this maybe overlooked is what I'm asking, and why we're looking at it now for 200,000?
Because it's up and it's, so the answer would be yes. We could have covered it during COVID. It would have been likely permissible. Our automation is at the end of the contract is this year. And the automation that we use is, what's the best word? It's not supported anymore. It's far too old,
Sure.
and it's not working properly.
Okay. And then as far as the unanticipated needs at $250,000, to me, that's an exorbitant amount. Now, granted, you have a lot of buildings, a lot of staff, and, but from I guess the taxpayer looking at it, $250,000 is a lot of dollars. And running a business, it might not necessarily be as such. Is there a way to reduce that budget and have it left as an unbudgeted item in the future to reduce our current burden of the subsidization that we're giving?
No, the short answer is no. Our facilities budget for the number of buildings and the age of our buildings is far too low. We started doing $250,000. So if you think about the boiler quote that we got for Hop Brook was $220,000. So if one boiler goes, our unanticipated needs the whole thing could be blown.
Sure.
We don't have any reserve funds. I mean, we have you folks. And by the way, I know that we're thankful for everything that you've been able to provide. You have this group in particular, has been wonderful to the Board of Education. I'm hoping that continues. But in reality, if we were funding this at 1 or 1.5 million, then we'd be able to perhaps say, well, we'll wait on a project. But we really identify only a certain number of projects each year. And then, again, our buildings are very old, and we use that money every year.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right, I'll defer to anyone else who may have questions or comments on the committees.
In case they have questions, we'll be very much.
Oh, yeah. If you are on Zoom, please use the raise hand function or chat function, and we'll call you up as they appear on the screen. Right now, I see none on Zoom. I don't know if anyone in the room has that.
Mr. Montini, last year, I don't remember who asked, but it was one of the members of the joint boards. If you were doing aging interviews with these students who were leaving, and now we're looking at an increase of 40% of students. Have you started doing that?
Not formally. We've had discussions about doing it when they come to
Do we
register.
have any idea why they're leaving? So that we can try and correct it.
I think what happens, and we are trying to correct it, the way you correct, you're never gonna correct it totally. Because people in public education generally don't have choice. So when a choice occurs, or when a choice develops or happens, you're gonna have some people that choose otherwise. So in COVID, when things in our middle grades, were students that were being, impacted the most. Our middle grades, like most schools throughout the state and country, those students were impacted. And I think what we had was, some folks that have communicated to us that they wanted to go to Aces at Chase for a different opportunity, right? So what we have Aces at Chase that bought Chase Collegiate, that's new here. Many of the students that attend Aces at Chase, perhaps, we've always had, let's say, 300, 400 students, New Haven magnet schools. New Haven magnet schools, there's no cost. There's a cost associated with Aces at Chase in terms of tuition. So you turn it around, we turn it around by creating and further developing amazing schools with really good experiences for kids. We've had some students return from Aces at Chase and they're super happy at City Hill, at Hillside. And the reason I'm naming those schools is starts in middle school, it starts in sixth grade and it goes up. It's growing into high school. So to your point, I cannot point to you to surveys and or to formal data, no. I think that's a really good question. It's something that the assistant superintendent and my team have talked about formalizing. We've had informal conversations with folks, but we don't have a data set to provide you. Yes.
As a follow-up to Wayne's, sorry, Dorothy, I'll get to it. As a follow-up to Wayne's question, if a student is to leave during the summertime, so it's a full year start, and it's expected to be a full year at Chase's or Aces at Chase, wherever it is, or any of the ones that we have to pay for. Say they get 3-4 months in and they decide to no longer go there and come back to public schools. Are we on the hook for the tuition for the entire year, or are we on the hook for the tuition of the duration of the time the student's there?
That depends. So if you're talking about a magnet school, the statute is wherever they're going in October, in terms of October 1st.
Okay,
If you're talking about an out-of-district placement, then it would be prorated on a essentially a monthly or even daily basis, if that were the case.
okay,
So the other thing I'll say is that the legislature last year passed a 58% cap on the tuition, which has helped. Which has helped. And the students that attend magnet schools are also included in the numbers for our ECS. So in theory, even though we pay out $3,600 for a student to attend Aces at Chase, in theory, we make money on them because our ECS is larger than $3,600 per student. That doesn't work if you're getting flat funded. So it's really only a theory.
gotcha. Dorothy, go ahead.
Question on ECS funding, the 29 million that you put in the front of the document, that's been the same number since 2011. And that, from what I understand, is the non-alliance portion of the ECS funds. So according to the budget snapshot from Lamont's proposal budget, they're identifying Naugatuck as an alliance district, and it's showing an ECS amount of 33 million. So how do we reconcile between those two numbers, and where does the difference come from?
The difference is the Alliance grant itself, which is already included in this budget fully. And it's listed on the grants.
So is that all part of the grant funding?
Yeah,
So
so
a combination. Board.
Okay.
It's
Yeah, I was just trying to
ECS
figure out where
plus
those
Alliance
dollars came
equals
from.
that
the Alliance grant is a grant to the Alliance districts, but it's through statutorily through ECS.
And the transportation grant, I think there's also a projection out there of 1.9, but at the present time, you're only getting half of what you had last year. I think that's the excess cost grant,
The transportation grant,
or the excess cost grant.
excess cost.
Yeah, the excess cost grant.
The excess cost grant, we've budgeted a certain amount, and then the remaining excess cost is for the 4 additional students that we are budgeting for.
And will you get the funding for that at some point?
Every year, around this time, and then another in the spring, we get excess cost, yes.
The other thing too is there was a lot of talk surrounding the curriculum director. I know the curriculum director left. And prior to bringing the curriculum director in, the position for the curriculum was held by the lead teachers because, and the only reason we brought the curriculum director in was because of Common Core and all the changes at the state level. I also understand that, the curriculum director we have here also had a lot of involvement with some of the state development. And I believe that individual is now at the state. So if she's doing the work at the state level, couldn't we just access the curriculum from the state level as opposed to continuing the curriculum director here locally and put it back to the lead positions?
No, we can't do that. So a couple things. One, there has been more than one person at central office here in terms of Naugatuck for a very long time. It was only a short window where the curriculum director here, Bridget Crispino, moved to assistant superintendent and it wasn't filled. During when it might not have been called that role, but there was a director of curriculum and then a separate person for assessment and something else. And then at one time when Dr. Scott was here, and we can go back and back and back, Dr. Cronin was an assistant, then for Dr. Tufts, et cetera. So the short answer is curriculum director is an antiquated name, but we're an alliance district. We have 4,000 students who come to us with all different needs, right? Social, emotional, et cetera, but academic, yes. So we, for districts our size, we're reducing to, before we cut this, we're already in the bottom third of ratio in terms of the other alliance districts for central office administrators. Districts our size have a person for likely subject areas or multiple people. But our needs, and our academic needs are many, and they require some more than just the assistant superintendent, and others, of course. Everybody lives in academics and teaching and learning and instruction. But curriculum is a piece, teaching and learning, and supporting folks academically, is something that we sorely need. So we're going down 3 administrators. My preference would be not to go down to the 4th, and then we'd be filling the curriculum director vacancy, likely with a updated job description. And that would more encompass more times in the school, and again, the broader teaching and learning with curriculum as a piece.
Okay. And given the challenge with the budget, has the central office given any further consideration with the consolidation or shared services between facilities, IT, and purchasing? Which in other towns, and Vernon, I think, is one example where they do shared services with the town and the facilities within the district. And the town kind of manages it from the top down, and then they assign the jobs according to the schools that the custodians work in. And I'm just wondering if that and the purchasing and IT would give you better price points and economies of scale and pricing the needs for the school. And it's something you might want to consider given the challenges that you have this year and you may probably be facing over the next couple of years, because from what I understand, ECS is going to be reducing over time over the next 5 years.
So our board thought the same thing, and I had a conversation with the mayor about shared services. There's a lot going on the town side. I don't need to tell you folks, and we're going to continue to collaborate, but I don't think we can turn it around that quickly. So we were talking about perhaps one department next year, and then building off of that.
So let me follow up for it. If we were to take your top 2 facility positions and put them on the borough side this year, what would that number look like? You don't have to tell me right now, but I would like to look at those numbers.
Okay.
And then number 2, the interventionists reading math that were eliminated this year, how much of the savings was that? And I'd like you to also quantify that number if you could.
Yeah, they were eliminated. We were going to end their year early and then we didn't. So there was no change to their schedule this year.
But they're not in the budget next year.
They are, our interventionists are funded 100% from Title I.
So
We're reducing the number of them next year because the Title I came in 150, 170,000 less. And then we're anticipating if it comes in less, that we may need to reduce those or shift the burden to the budget, which right now there's too many challenges to do. So yeah, so we can give you all of the information that you want in that regard, but our title grant is
I
about $1
guess I
million.
was under the impression that they weren't there anymore. Maybe I was wrong.
So, yeah, there's a lot of, I think, narratives that were said, but, we were gonna end them early. They typically end mid-May. We were going to end them at the end of March. But we are continuing them through their normal May 23rd of this particular year.
And into next year.
Yes, just next year, instead of, we'll have, 2.5 at this point, 2.5 FTEs less. And then if the federal money comes in September less, we may need to shrink that number even more.
The answer to your first question, Mayor, is about 172,000 less benefits.
So. I'll remember myself.
Wow,
Well,
it's good.
and it could have been in a conversation with you, I'm not sure, but I guess I thought that we were losing some people who were critical to education. And is that number 172?
No, that number was for the 2 facility people that you kindly offered to.
Oh, you mean just their salaries,
Correct,
172?
yes,
That does not include benefits.
correct.
But it would eliminate 2 benefit packages as well.
Certainly.
Other questions, Ken?
I have a lot of questions, but I think I'll have a lot of opportunities for continuing the discussion, so I would rather have the other members, have the superintendent tell us,
I have a question for the superintendent.
Okay.
The people that the positions that Mayor Hess just mentioned. Now, are those positions that are might be working off-site for to tutor students?
The ones the mayor referenced are in our schools.
Okay, now, don't you have programs for off-site,
We do,
and is that program continuing?
yes.
Okay, now, my understanding that those individuals are making about $35 an hour.
So our reading and math assistants make, depending on their level of education, make $30 or $25 an hour. Oh, do we have? Or
20, 25,
20,
30.
25 and 30.
Mhm.
The contractual hourly rate for a tutor that's doing off-site, certified teacher, if it's through the teacher's contract, which is not the reading and math assistants, it's $50 an hour.
Okay, 'cause it was my understanding that there were some people that were getting $35 an hour. They were increased to $50 an hour.
Yes,
Okay, that's a 43% increase in pay.
Yep.
And they didn't even ask for that. I was told by a few individuals, they would have been happy to stay there for $35 an hour.
they don't speak for the bargaining unit, so those are perhaps a couple of
Those
individuals.
are part-time.
Those are the tutors that I think you're referring to, so our students that are on medical, that need tutoring for medical needs and or students that are expelled. Yes, will likely be a part of our tutoring program. The contractual hourly rate for NTL teacher in the bargain contract is 50. It used to be 38.86. It was not increased in, let's say, a decade. When we negotiate, we look at comps, we look at lots of different things. It's still less than a teacher's salary.
Yeah, I understand that. It just seems to go from 35 up to $50. That's just one little area that you got. You know, on a $73 million budget, it might not seem like a lot, but if you have all these little things here and there that might have gone up that much. I just think it's ludicrous that it was increased by 43%. 32.87, I just figured.
Yeah, it was closer to $39, not 35. But still, so your percent's 38 instead of 43, whatever it may be. I understand.
Thank you.
Yep.
Question, in regards to like, I guess it's gonna be similar to what Fran's mentioning with the nursing. So we're going down one nurse.
Yeah.
However, we contract out for sub nurses. So the contract sub nurses are getting paid X amount of dollars. Is there a way to not contract out and keep a full-time nurse instead with these schools increasing in size and not having extra nursing, but paying double to contract out?
Yeah.
Just seems,
Yeah, we only contract out on a necessity.
okay,
So, it's been hard to staff on the school nurses and then hard to get subs. So, I could tell you, that, and so can Mrs. Cooney, that I don't want to contract out, at all. So you should know that our ratios for nurses, in
Yeah.
terms of, it was the, out of all of our different categories, our student ratio to nurses was the only one that was in the top third or top even 5 of the comps as they relate to alliance districts. So we have a better nursing ratio to students because we have such small schools.
Will
so,
that change?
but my
That'll change.
question, so yes, the ratio, looking at the number, yes, and I'm not picking this because I'm sitting here in my scrubs, this is just what I'm looking at. However, are our students' medical needs higher? So our numbers might be lower, but we have high numbers of diabetics, the IEPs, the nurses are included in their care plans, like stuff like that. Where just having contracted nurses because staffing is difficult, how are they effectively writing the care plans and the 504s and the
Well,
things like that?
we only use them for subs.
Right. I just, that,
So we have a small amount, we post for sub nurses in district, and we have a small amount of a very small pool that changes regularly, that we will fill the nursing sub positions with those internal posted sub nurses. But to your point, if we have a need in a building and we utilize those 3 people as an example, and then we're gonna need to, then we are forced with having to use that service, which we try very hard. Deb Sowers, our nursing supervisor, does a really good job trying not to use that service as much as possible.
right.
But in buildings where we have particular needs and we need to have it covered with a particular
Now, is
level
there
of
a
a
fee that
nurse.
comes along with that service?
Yes, so we have a contract with a particular service, and yes, the rates are high. So that's why we try not to use.
So that's kind of where I'm putting the comparison in with, we're reducing a full-time nurse that potentially might stay if offered
I see what you're
X
saying.
amount of dollars,
You're saying
They use
keep
the
them as a
floater.
floater, keep them
Correct.
as.
Use them as a
as
floater.
opposed to this
Post the contract.
I see what you're
contract,
saying.
high priced contract service.
Yeah, that's something that we try to do currently.
Yeah.
And again, it's like, small amounts of stuff that can potentially add up
Mhm.
into savings.
We did do that with, we had an employee that was an LPN, and we were utilizing that structure for a long time.
Was it not working? Is that why they don't do it anymore?
I think you can easily go somewhere else as a nurse and make more money.
Right.
Our nurses were historically, I would say underpaid.
Thanks, school nurses as a whole, not
Yeah.
just in Naugatuck, as a whole,
I agree,
they
with you.
do great work.
I agree with you.
Okay.
Better.
So you have to excuse my new guy questions.
So good.
The 2 things that grabbed, thank you for your presentation. The 2 things that grabbed my attention the most from those were the capital/other increasing and the, as you pointed out, the out-of-district transportation were the two large increases. Could you tell me exactly what those two things like entail? What exactly are they?
The out of district.
The transportation, like what are we doing out of district?
Yep. Is there a place that we can point to in the budget book or not really for that?
I think you just ask him for what is it?
Like what is it?
Just want to know what it is, I think, person. What does it mean?
Got it.
Why do we have to send somebody out?
So we have, we'll have 38 students who, through the process of a PPT, someone with an IEP or have their specialized needs, and the PPT, which is a team including the parents and the school, members of the school, they determine collectively that a student might need a more restrictive environment or additional program. So, for example, there are some special schools that specialize in working with students that are either blind or deaf or what have you, right? So those 38 students will require more specialized schooling that comes at a higher cost. That's the cost of the out-of-district placement that I was talking to you about. The average transportation for that individual student can be from about 50 to 80,000, depending if there's medical needs, if there is a need for aids on the bus. So if we have a student that goes to a school that would be in Vernon or in West Hartford, we need to provide transportation for that child to that school. So that's what's driving the cost up. Sometimes that's $400 or $500 a day per child. Yeah.
Okay, and then what with the capital / other, what is that?
The capital, that's page 86, we'll list it out. Those are our facilities projects, the things that we're attempting to, we're gonna replace some doors, we're going to repoint some brickwork that's leaking. We are going to replace a driveway or the entryway over at Hopbrook School. We have to get some screens and we have to replace some stalls. We have to fix a boiler, a different boiler than, I'm sorry, I don't have my readers. Yeah, so that's, the capital is just, it's our facilities account.
Okay, and then my one last silly question.
No.
Is in the financial overview plan and then the appendix A. On page 68 on, if we're closing Salem School, we still have expenses there for salaries. I'm just curious what that is.
Yeah. Page 68. You said 68, right?
Well, just from 68 on, but I mean, it's more kind of summed up on page 7.
Yeah. Right. So, we are still doing the human resources portion of the closure of Salem. It's relatively complicated, so we've taken the estimated savings out of the budget, but we haven't moved the actual people to where they're going yet.
So will they be moving to other schools
Correct,
for next year?
yes.
Okay.
So, we move the students and then the human resources and some other things follow the students.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Question for Nicole, I think, when someone moves to Northern with an IEP that mandates special education, are you stuck with that confusion and we automatically have to send them and pay? Or do you get to reevaluate and see if we can provide an appropriate education?
So we're required to implement the IEP as written to start, and then that student's team can reconvene and change that decision. Typically, a child's needs obviously don't change because they're moving, but our district might have more in-district programming, to your point, than another district, so we may be able to bring that student back.
No, but I mean, those are all $150,000 items for each one, they're.
Yes, and I know that's what we're talking about, but when individual teams are making those decisions, we're required to not consider the cost, we're required to consider the child's needs.
No, I just meant if it's mandated by someone else and they're not as sharp as you are, you got a shot to double check it.
I will keep that in mind. It's not that simple, but yes, I am sharper than most other specialists.
Right. Get that better.
Mark, and this is either for Mr. Monsignor or the mayor or both to be answered. With the closing of Salem School, who's going to be responsible for that school? In other words, for maintaining it. I don't want to see a problem like we have with building
It's
12.
obviously gonna have to be the town, because it's not in their budget, so
Yeah.
All right.
we've already, if it closes, it'll go into our townwide expense budget, which we're still putting together.
Okay, thank you.
Question.
Dorothy?
I noticed that IT shows a 24% reduction. Will that impact at all the Chromebooks that all the students use in the schools?
No, our Chromebooks we're on a replacement cycle. We'll continue that. That's actually currently funded through the Alliance grant. We identified, it came in flat originally at the board level. We have, computers at the high school that need to be replaced. So we reduced it for now because we're looking for all areas of savings. And then we're hoping, that either we come in good or, and then we can do that project either at the end of the year if things are looking good. Or we would delay it until the summer and the next fiscal year's budget.
I also noticed that there's a line item that says non-union wages are frozen. There's a non-union wage freeze.
Where did you do that?
Where's the page here? It's like 17,000.
Oh, there's, yeah, there's,
Is that a mislabel or?
no,
No?
that's a potential anticipated savings that the board is working on through
I was
wages.
gonna say, it's kind of tough to freeze wages when all the other departments that might be union get their increases.
Yeah, that it relates to non-union, leadership.
Okay. And then my last question is, given the fact that your insurance no longer has the premium cap, so we get what your experience is showing, and the broker has done such a great job in basically purchasing block with Anthem, have you rediscussed or renegotiated the commission that you're paying the broker for that increased premium component?
Thank you, John. Yes, please. Once Dorothy starts going insurance,
Your eyes, please.
Yeah, so just to your point, from an insurance standpoint, our claims over the last year have been out of sight. We're at 108% cost ratio
Up
right
a little
now.
bit more since the other.
So it's actually going up. We started at 106 at the beginning of the budget process. And basically what that means is for every dollar in claim, Anthem's paying out $1.08. So they're taking a little bit of a bath right now with claims from the borough. So that's really what's driving the 11% increase from a claim standpoint. Thankfully, we're still in the consortium that was built by our broker with 12 other towns and boards of education. So that kept our increase down to 11%. Basically, if we're out in the market on our own at 108% loss ratio,
I would know.
we'd be looking at 20% increase. So 11% is looking pretty good at this point.
Yeah.
But
Well, considering you're running at 108, yeah.
to your point, relative to the broker, we're under contract to them through June of 2026. So we anticipate, as we get into the latter part of the next fiscal year, that we will look to see if there's any other options out there from the broker standpoint.
It's always good to keep them on their toes.
I'm sorry?
It's always good to keep the brokers on their toes.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you, Dorothy. Any other questions? I don't see any online. Or else in the room, but I do want to say, a lot of you know I do foster and adoptive care. I've had 27 children now in my time doing this. I have dealt with Naugatuck Public Schools, of course, that's my favorite. But I've also dealt with a lot of other school districts, working with the IEP plans that were touched upon tonight, working with the different services and needs and transportation. And I have to compliment everyone who's in the Naugatuck system. Every time I talk to a guardian ad litem or an attorney or someone who finds out I've got a student here, they always say this is the best place to be for the students. So I do need to extend that compliment as a personal point of privilege, being the chairman this year of this committee, because it's needed to be said. We might not be happy with the numbers you're giving us, but I can definitely personally attest to the experience that the students are getting and have had many Naugatuck graduates so far and probably many more to go. I'm only 36 and I'm gonna do this probably until I die. So thank you for everything that you guys are doing, especially the volunteers on the board and our staff that is working relentlessly. I've got 7 children at home right now and it's basically a classroom and it's a nightmare in that experience. So for the teachers in the room, I know what you're experiencing kind of on a personal level. And I just want to thank everyone for the continued efforts because it's a lot of the same faces that sit around this table every year. And there's a lot of work that goes into it in running this entire district. Thank you. If there's any other questions, comments, I don't see any. I think we can officially adjourn our workshop at 7:51 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you.